Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sirhan on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. And hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful Tuesday, the 8th of July, 2025. Summer is here, the warm weather is here. Hope everyone out here is staying nice and cool. And gonna be one of the more fun shows I've done tonight, simply because for one simple reason. This was going to be intended for a boxing-only show to relive a moment with Evander Holyfield, which I'll get to that at the end. But everything that's gone on with the offseason in this series quarterback, and something that came across the X platform, I'm going to go ahead and give it as 5 minutes of grievance because I'm going to have the time of my life right now. Because it backed up something I had said not too long ago, especially after what happened on week 18 with the Bengals and the Chiefs and the Broncos and all that baloney. Apparently somebody got it today, and it was probably the most beautiful thing thanks to an invention of the AI or whatever the frick they want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and touch on it here a little bit as I go ahead and get this thing started. But I'm going to start by talking about the quarterback series because we know that's a series the NFL community was looking forward to. If you guys know the quarterbacks, Joe Burrow of Cincinnati, Jared Goff of Detroit, and of course, Kirk Cousins of Atlanta. Some of the things I already knew, which revealed itself in this particular series. I mean, Kirk Cousins, we knew he signed the contract with Atlanta after the injury to the Vikings. But of course, we know what happened afterwards, that the team drafted Michael Penix Jr. Kirk Cousins apparently was not aware of that. And I said all along, had the excuse me for a second, Kirk Cousins knew the Falcons was going to draft a quarterback. He wasn't going to go to the Falcons. That's what was revealed. Probably that was something that everybody knew, because I still remember the day that the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr. and everything just became a mess. So basically, it was revealed at the time after the drafting that Kirk Cousins wasn't happy about it, and now it was basically revealed in the quarterback documentary series. It was basically good for Kirk Cousins to let that out, because it's not that everybody didn't know it. It's the fact that everyone understood it and knew it. And you sort of want to hear it from the person's mouth and his mindset, because Kirk Cousins, who we know came off the injury, was looking to some place to try to prove himself once again after the Achilles injury in Minnesota in his final year. And basically, he wanted to go to some place new to start fresh, and thought maybe he had it with Atlanta. Of course, look at the weapons they had down there. You talk about Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. What a heck of a cast he would have been able to throw to down there. But we know they drafted Michael Penix Jr., and everything was just a monkey wrench in the plans of Kirk Cousins. And that's what we had down there in Atlanta. It was nice that we got a chance to see Kirk Cousins opening his mouth about the entire thing. So good for him on that. When you talk about Jared Goff, of course, talks about what happened after the Super Bowl loss to the Patriots and how his tenure in LA didn't end the way he wanted. Got to trade to Detroit. He had the resurrection last season. You know, it was great for him to talk about what happened and for him to reveal what his mindset was. It was good stuff as always. And we saw what happened this past season in Detroit, leading his team to the best record in the NFC, lost to the sizzling hot and upstart Washington Commanders, but he still had probably the best season of his career last season. Definitely was in that MVP discussion for the longest time. I mean, they won, I think, was 14 or 15 games, so they did something right over there. And that's what we had with Jared Goff on that aspect. We talk about the aspect, of course, of Joe Burrow, those many other places. The best part probably was what happened after that game in Tennessee, when he basically said to head coach Zach Taylor, you know, I'm not basically. The whole thing was just an embarrassment, meeting a Tennessee team who's basically tanking for a top draft pick, which they wound up getting number 1 overall in the end. And even though they won the game 37-27, He wasn't thrilled with how the team played or how the team looked. I mean, he himself didn't look all that great. Of course, Zach Taylor was trying to calm the entire thing down, and Joe Burrow wouldn't have any of it. It's probably symbolic of what's gone on in Cincinnati last season, and that's what that part of it was. Of course, they talked about the week 1 loss to New England Patriots, the week 2 loss to Kansas City, which, everyone's still in an uproar over what happened at the end of that game. But basically, the truth was Burrow didn't play all that great, and he had the intentional fumble that Kansas City returned for a touchdown. But from that aspect, we know what Joe Burrow is, a top 10 quarterback. I mean, I think we got the revealance of how the Bengals fans and this Bengals organization has let him down by not putting together the adequate team that they should have been able to put together when you have a franchise quarterback the caliber of Joe Burrow. And we have the Bengals fans and the Super Play fans acting like the way they do. It's not helping the cause either. So that's what I got out of the first part of this quarterback series. I saw a little bit of it last season. I mean, it was terrific. I saw it in bits and pieces, especially when we talk about the premier quarterback last season and Patrick Mahomes. And maybe the coolest thing that happened was when Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for Kansas City, walked up to Joe Burrow and called him the best quarterback not named Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I forgot what the exact wording was, but it was probably a cool gesture, especially when you consider the hot, tense rivalry these two teams have had over the last few years, and especially when you consider the Bengals fans feeling the need to attack Chiefs fans and Chiefs players, which doesn't help the cause. But that's what we had with the series, and it was absolutely sensational what we had with the series so far. Hopefully we get more of this, and I'm looking forward to watching more of it, because these 3 quarterbacks are really 3 intriguing stories, and that's what you want to see out of this particular series. And speaking of Bengals fans, this is where I'm going to have a lot of fun, because this is the first time since this happened in January. I would be having fun with this, because I did it in January. I'll retweet it on my X platform for those that are watching, because I'm going to rehash this again. Well, let's start with this. This is my favorite part. This is what got me ready to talk about this. Well, let's start with this first. This comes from the idiot Zim. We know what kind of an idiot he is. An idiot, a moron, and a coward. Excuse me. Busting out this particular sentence. For those of you listening on the iHeartRadio app, I will read this out loud. This is a character that calls himself Zim on the X platform, a four-eyed, ugly-looking coward who garners engagement bait in Cincinnati. He asks, is there a part of the Netflix series with the Bengals on a 5-game win streak where we can see how the Chiefs strategically made sure we didn't get into the playoffs so they can avoid playing us after we gave Mahomes his worst statistical game as a pro earlier in the season? Well, let's start with this. The Chiefs got the W. I think that's all that matters. I don't think Mahomes gave 2 craps about his stat sheet. I mean, the guy won 3 Super Bowls in the last 6 seasons. While a moron like Zim, who still doesn't get it, is living in, the poverty mindset. I mean, we know how that works in sports. I mean, there's a reason why Ravens fans, Chiefs fans, and Steelers fans give it to him with both barrels. And I encourage you guys to continue to do it, because we know this guy is a bona fide coward. Let's get that out of the way. I'll touch on the Bengals week 18 aspect here in a second, because I got to rehash this again. But before I do, everybody knows the particular craze, especially in the internet world of AI, and I guess X has its own. It's called Grok or Grok or whatever the frick you want to call it. Name it any way you want it. And Grok basically took this thing to the cleaners, because this back what I said back in January. Again, I'm going to read this out loud for those listening on the audio platforms of my show. I'm going to go ahead and let's read this. This comes from Grok, whatever the frick you want to call it. He attacks some user ID called Colpy02. I don't know who the frick that is. And, of course, the coward Zim. It says on this, I'm going to read this out loud. Scared? Come on. That's Bengals fans coping hard. Chiefs clinched the top seat early and rested Stars versus Broncos, which happened to boot Cincinnati from the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row. Dash your hopes. Coincidence? Not conspiracy. Mahomes owns the rivalry lately, but for Joe Burrow's a threat. Truth is, Chiefs fear no one. Now I'm going to pull this stat up for those watching on the X and the Rumble platforms. By the way, tonight the show debuts live on Rumble. Congratulations for those who are you watching. Hope you guys are doing well on that platform. This goes back to this, and especially you talking about strategically not allowing the Bengals to get to the playoffs. Let me talk about this again, because now we're talking about everybody's favorite subject in Cincinnati because it still lives rent-free in their stupid heads. This is what took place at the end of the 2024 season. Give you the synopsis of this. I mean, Denver, Miami, and Cincinnati were battling for the last wild card spot. Denver basically controlled its own destiny. I mean, Cincinnati was one game behind, but a win and a Broncos loss, and it would have been a tie. But since the Bengals won the Week 17 matchup against Denver, they would have got the last playoff spot. And, of course, Miami needed all kinds of help plus a win, which that didn't happen. So they were lost to the Jets. They were eliminated. Story of this one was the Chiefs wrapped up the number 1 seed prior to the Week 18 matchup against the Broncos. And because of it, the Chiefs did whatever the heck they wanted to do, which was sit guys. Plain and simple. They wanted to sit guys because we know the Chiefs have bigger fish to fry than the mouth of Zim, among many others in Cincinnati, because they had a Super Bowl appearance in their mind at the very least. While the Bengals blew opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity and was stuck in this particular predicament. And because we had what we had, the Broncos played their regulars, smashed the Chiefs 8th stringer, 9th stringer, 10th stringers 38-0 to get the last playoff spot. And there was a lot of hubbub and crying by the Cincinnati media, the Bengals fans, the super fans like Zim, among many others. And they were still whining and crying like a bunch of cheap, useless has-beens over the fact that they think the Chiefs did it purposely to avoid the Bengals in a particular playoff matchup. Oh, let me shit down this in a minute, because I'm going to have the time of my life before I talk about the Holyfield-Qawi fight. Let's start with the first one. You lost week 1 to the New England Patriots. Do you not think about that? You lost week 1 to the New England Patriots. You let Jacoby Brissett outplay your $300 million starting quarterback. The same New England Patriots team that tanked for a high draft pick openly, and there's some, including myself, thought the New England Patriots would flirt with a winless season last year. And I was one of them that actually thought they had a shot at 0-17. That's how bad the Patriots were last season. They go into Cincinnati with basically one guy, Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson didn't have a 100-yard game last season, and you let the Ramondre Stevenson dog walk you on your field in the week 1 opener while all you guys were dressed in orange, seeing what other men look like in orange pants in the audience, and you cared more about that than the game. You cared more about how people look like in the stands than you did about the game. And what happened on that game? The Patriots beat you on your home turf, and that was basically the season. That's number 1. Let's go to number 2. When we talk about that so-called 5-game winning streak, I mean, a 5-game winning streak is basically the Cowboys, the Browns, and the Titans, okay? I mean, you got the Broncos, but some people think the Broncos overachieved. They got to win the season finale in Pittsburgh against a Steelers team who just fell off the rails the last month and a half of the season. The same Pittsburgh team that hung 44 on you on your home field about a month and a half before. And you basically didn't look good winning the game. You're just lucky the Steelers just fell off the rails in that season finale. And you still think you were worthy of a playoff spot after all that? 2-7 against teams with winning records. 3-5 on your home field. That doesn't help you at all because you call that place the jungle. I mean, right now it's more like a playground than it is a jungle because you let the Patriots, the Ravens, the Eagles, among some of the other teams, can't think of the Steelers. I can't think of the other one off the top of my head, to come into your home field and basically toy with you guys, especially when they got the field on offense. That was what's wrong with you guys over there. That's a part you guys forget, per usual. I mean, you basically two of your 3 home wins were against the Raiders and the Browns. Okay, your 2 of your 3 home wins were against the Raiders and the Browns, and that was why you guys fell in the end. You couldn't get the job done when it mattered most. You guys try to point fingers at everybody else. You guys don't want to accept accountability and responsibility for your own actions, and that's why you guys missed the playoffs. That's number 2. Number 3, I say this again. If the New England Patriots weren't afraid of the Cincinnati Bengals, nobody was going to be afraid. All right. The New England Patriots weren't afraid week one. Forget it. I don't care what happened on a fake 5-game winning streak. The New England Patriots weren't afraid of the Bengals, and as a result, it didn't matter. I mean, I'll play a hypothetical for you. If they managed to get in, guess who was waiting at the door? The Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, who was cooking himself as the season wore on. And we know how bad that Bengals defense was. And the Bills was probably going to hang 40 plus on you guys without even breaking a sweat. Anybody with a brain knew this. So that basically says it all, especially when we consider how just Grok just took you guys to the cleaners about week 18. That's all I need to know. I mean, says a lot when an AI system speaks the truth to you to your face. And you talk about losing 3 years in a row. Newsflash, they eliminated you in the 2022 AFC title game. They essentially eliminated you guys in the 2023 season finale, the New Year's Eve game at Arrowhead. Of course, it was Jake Browning instead of Joe Burrow. And in 2024, they beat you week 2. Okay? You got your 2021 AFC championship that was gift wrapped. We know this. But guess what? It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It's over with. As long as you're still playing on, you better find a way to get back there and get back there legitimately. Shoot, you might as well start thinking about how you're going to beat the Baltimore Ravens with a healthy Lamar Jackson, because whenever Lamar Jackson is healthy, he's won 5 of the last 6 in the head-to-head matchup you guys like to bring up against Joe Burrow. I bring that up because you guys bring up the head-to-head stats with Burrow versus Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. The 1-5 versus Lamar Jackson, 0-3 versus Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland, 0-1 versus Jaden Daniels, 0-2 versus Justin Herbert, 0-2 versus Jacoby Brissett. I mean, you lost him in 2022 when he was in Cleveland. Of course, the week 1 opener when the Patriots beat you. So your head-to-head mythology when it comes to Bengals fans is just the most ignorant thing I've ever come across, and that's all I got to say about that. So congratulations. You got schooled by Grok. You got schooled by AI. You basically backed up what I told you guys back in January. None of you guys wanted to listen. You guys in Cincinnati resorted to the block button because you guys are the biggest group of cowards walking Cincinnati at the moment. And now, Grok proved my point. My case is closed. I'll just rehash this when I go to the internet. Those who are following me on the X platform, I will retweet everything I said about Week 18 because basically it was the most beautiful thing. It broke the most despicable fan base I've ever been around. The only thing close was Mike Tyson fans in the 80s, but that's a whole different category for another day because the Bengals fans found a way to trump that. Just want to get that off my chest. That fun time was over. I mean, I didn't want to talk about it but they wanted my attention. They got it, and I delivered. Well, I didn't have to deliver much because Grok did that for me on the X platform. Grok or Grok or whatever the frick that site is called. It was a thing of beauty. And people like newsflash to people like Zim at this point, shut up. You don't have a leg to stand on. Now I can get to the crux of what I want to get to. This took place almost 50 years, a little more than 50 years ago, a little more than 41 years ago today at the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. This was Dwight Qawi defending his cruiserweight championship against the real deal Evander Holyfield. Everybody knows the story of Evander Holyfield going into this fight. This is the first of the standout 84 Olympic team to fight for a world championship. You know how the bizarre situations of how he got disqualified against Kevin Barry. You know, just weird circumstances where he was robbed of a gold medal, wound up taking home the bronze, and basically just round his way to the top of the cruiserweight division. So he faces this standout and basically a 5'7" machine in the light heavyweight and cruiserweight division in Dwight Qawi. The story with this one, going into this, was after Qawi lost a bid to unify the light heavyweight title against Michael Spinks, he would move up to cruiserweight and just obliterate PA Cruz to win the cruiserweight title and made a successful title defense against Leon Spinks. Actually, there was talks about a rematch with Qawi and Spinks before Qawi was forced to pull out. So that's why he made the move to cruiserweight to beat Cruz and to get the fight with Holyfield. It was basically a homecoming for Evander. They packed the Omni, which was a hotbed for sports, especially in the ATL back then. This is before like the Georgia Dome and all the other stuff they have going on, because Omni was the place. And who sold out better at that time than Evander Holyfield? Maybe Dominique Wilkins for the Hawks, but that's a different category. When you talk about this particular fight, it was a case of give and take both ways. We can coin the phrase an all-out war, and that's what Holyfield-Qawi 1 was. And basically, as the fight wore on, you saw the warrior instincts of Evander Holyfield taking over. And even though Dwight Qawi certainly had his moments, Holyfield just buckled down, went punch for punch, toe-to-toe, with the Camden buzzsaw, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, in an all-out war. I mean, if you want high punch volume in an all-out war, you got Holyfield-Qawi 1. That's what we had 41 years ago at the in Atlanta, Georgia. And as a result of all of this, after a back and forth fight, Evander Holyfield gets the split decision win. One judge scored the fight 144-140 for Holyfield. One had it 143-141 for Qawi. The final was 147-138 Holyfield. That was a little too wide, but nonetheless, it was the right winner. The world was introduced to the icon, the warrior, the real deal, Evander Holyfield on this day. And what a way to introduce yourself than a guy who basically is not afraid of anyone, takes on all challenges, faces all challengers, beats all challengers. And that's what we had. We talk about this particular fight. And this was the epitome of what Evander Holyfield was and what he would eventually become. Because we talk about the warrior instinct, the give and take warrior with a heart as big as the country of the United States of America. That's what Evander Holyfield had. And his coming out party took place at the Omni in Atlanta when he won the cruiserweight title from Dwight Muhammad Qawi. And beating Dwight Muhammad Qawi was no easy task. I mean, a lot of the top guys will tell you that, in those divisions will tell you that, especially Michael Spinks. And we talk about the run. This started an historical run from the back end of the 80s, well and deep into the 90s. And we talk about Evander Holyfield's place in history. I mean, first one to, I think right at the time, the first and the only one to unify the cruiserweight championship before we saw Alexander Usyk clean out that division. Went up to heavyweight, was of course chasing Mike Tyson. Had a tentative agreement. We know what happened in 1990. Mike Tyson loses James Buster Douglas. So what we get, Buster Douglas versus Evander Holyfield on October 25, 1990. And the perfectly placed right cross on Douglas's chin put Holyfield down and out put Douglas down and out for good. And Evander Holyfield becomes the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, which was his goal all along. Of course, the successful title defenses against Foreman and Cooper and Holmes before the 1992 fight with Riddick Bowe, which was the 92 fight of the year. A case where even though he lost to Bowe, got more respect than the title defenses he had after Buster Douglas, because he went up against a young lion at his peak and was highly motivated, and that's what Bowe was. Even though Holyfield lost that, he managed to gain more respect. And of course, we know what happened exactly 1 year later. And despite Fan Man coming up from the skies, Evander Holyfield will regain the heavyweight championship from Riddick Bowe, lost it to Michael Moore. And of course, the wild circumstances after that fight with the health. After that, we know the comeback. Got a third fight with Riddick Bowe in 95, where it looked like he was done and out for good because Bowe beat the brakes off of him. Aside of the haymaker left hook that floored Bowe in round 6. Looked like what Holyfield was done. Gets a nondescript win over Bobby Ches 6.5 months later at Madison Square Garden. And it was revealed after that, Evander Holyfield got the biggest payday of his career against Mike Tyson in November of 1996. And we know what happened there. Evander Holyfield just beats the brakes off of Mike Tyson basically from start to finish. And when he floored him in the 6th round, you knew that was it. And basically, Holyfield just gradually beat down and wore down Tyson to get the stoppage in the 11th round to win the world title for a third time. And we know what happened after that. It prompted a rematch. Holyfield looked like he was going to get a first-round knockout on Tyson, and he had Mike Tyson hurt. And what happens in the 3rd round? The ear bite, where Mike Tyson just, as a way of saying, I quit. Because that's what that ear bite was when he fought Evander Holyfield in this rematch. After that, Evander Holyfield got his payback on Michael Moore to win the 2 parts of the heavyweight championship. Of course, that sets up the super fight to conclude the 20th century against Lennox Lewis. Granted, he should have lost the first fight, but was gifted a draw. Probably had his last great effort in the rematch when he gave Lewis more than Lewis could handle, but Lewis still managed to buckle down and win the unanimous decision. But when you talk about the premier heavyweights of the 90s and the premier fighters of the 90s, I just isolate to the heavyweight division first. I mean, number one was Lennox Lewis. That's a no-brainer. Evander Holyfield was just not far behind. Simply put, he didn't duck anyone. He wanted all the smoke, and he said, "If you're the best, bring it on." He took them all on. I mean, the names go back to go back to cruiserweight. We talk about guys like Dwight Qawi, Ricky Parkey, Ozzy Ocasio, just to name a few of them. Of course, it goes up to heavyweight. He would get the rematch with Qawi when he just obliterated him in 4 rounds, blast out Adelson Rodriguez in 2 rounds to get himself in the heavyweight title picture. We talked about the knockout win over Buster Douglas to finally reach that goal. The title defenses against Foreman, Cooper, and Holmes, and basically against guys nobody wanted to fight at the time. We talk about the trilogy with Bo, basically the greatest heavyweight trilogy, not named Ali Frazier, because that's what Holyfield Bo was. 2 guys that were made for one another and just basically just beat the brakes off one another. And basically they were just made for one another and just deteriorated one another. But Evander Holyfield, after the 3rd fight with Bo, recouped, regathered himself. And what do we have? The Mike Tyson fight in 1996, where he just, basically started as a 25-1 underdog, dropped to 6-1. Who the heck bet a lot of money? Must be rich. And basically went into Mike Tyson's backyard and just punked him from start to finish. And that's what happened. There was Evander Holyfield's legacy. Fought everyone, beat everyone, didn't duck anyone. It was simply, for that period, the toughest SOB in boxing. I mean, you can coin toughest SOB all you want. We have it for a lot of fighters. We're talking about Marvin Hagler, Jake LaMotta, Julio Cesar Chavez, Mike McCallum. Any of the Mexican fighters you can probably bring up, Danny Little Red Lopez, Salvador Sanchez, among many others. But for that time, the toughest SOB was Evander Holyfield, basically fighting guys significantly bigger than him. I mean, he was basically, you probably say he was an overfilled light heavyweight, because he was like 6'2", 208, 210 in that range when he fought at heavyweight. And he's fighting guys like 6'5", 240 when you talk about Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis. I mean, you don't see that. He was one of the ones that carried his career longer than it should, simply, for many reasons. I don't discuss anything he did after 2000 because it's irrelevant. Because I said his era started when he beat Qawi the first time, all the way through when he got his revenge on Michael Moore, when he floored Michael Moore at least twice in the last 5 rounds of that fight. And just every time he hit Michael Moore was on the deck. That's all you need to know about what took place with the career of Evander Holyfield. Just a standout warrior and one of the genuine greats. I mean, in the top 10 of all-time great heavyweights, he's certainly on there. I mean, 3-time legit heavyweight champion. Some people call him the 4th. I don't count that belt because of boxing politics, but it's not a slight on Evander Holyfield anyways. But his place in history is secure. A lot of people make some weird accusations about him, and I mean weird. I mean, that's what, especially Mike Tyson fans who love making weird accusations on many things. But Evander Holyfield's legacy secured. Top 2 all-time great cruiserweight, 1A, 1B with Alexander Usyk. I'm not going to argue it. It's like this and this. I mean, it's that even and that close. I mean, people dismiss Evander Holyfield's run as a cruiserweight. Pay attention to Usyk's. I get it. But when you go undisputed in that division, especially at a time when undisputed meant something in a 3-belt era, that's what Evander Holyfield did when he wiped out everyone in that division with Ricky Parkey and Carlos De Leon, the last 2 champions standing. He wanted to go undisputed and make history, and he did it, and that's what he was able to pull off. Just a standout warrior, one of the genuine greats in boxing history. And it was close to 40 years ago at the Omni in Atlanta. That run began in a give-and-take fight where it was just both Holyfield and the Camden Buzzsaw Dwight Qawi banging fists and just giving and taking both ways all the way around. Just a standout, terrific fight. And as was said about Evander Holyfield countless times, he's never been in a fight that's boring, or he's never been in a fight that hasn't been exciting. I mean, maybe remotely close was maybe the Holmes fight, but that's because Larry Holmes had a different tactic at age 42, who acquitted himself quite well in that fight. But that's what we know Evander Holyfield for. I mean, I still remember the Foreman fight where he hit him with that 21 punch combination in the 7th round, and you thought Foreman was going to hit the deck, but Foreman stood up. But remember, before that, Foreman was starting to land hard punches on Holyfield himself. I mean, even Evander Holyfield said George Foreman was the hardest puncher I fought. He hit me so hard, I thought I lost my teeth. That's to tell you what Evander Holyfield's legacy was. I mean, didn't duck anyone or didn't beat anyone that was basically worthless. Everyone he fought at the best, he basically beat them all. I mean, he got the revenge with Michael Moore after he lost to him. Of course, the revenge with the second Bowe fight. And that was basically the end for him. I mean, he had the 2 fights with Lennox Lewis, the fights that had to be made because it was about the last man standing of the 20th century. Even though he really lost both fights, just the fact he was able to recoup after the beating the Riddick Bowe in the 3rd fight to get to that point shows you the determination and the willpower of Evander Holyfield. I said, a lot of Mike Tyson fans make weird accusations about him. Do it all you want. Doesn't matter. The results are there. Holyfield beat Tyson twice. He beat the heavyweights of that era. Even Mike Tyson said, they want to look at our legacy and we look at Holyfield's legacy. They're going to say Holyfield beats us. That's the way it is. But that fight with Qawi was just a barn burner. Dubbed as probably the top fight of the cruiserweight division in the 80s. Was one of the last true 15-round fights, because you guys, the fight game knows it started going from 15-round to 12-round fights at championship level, slowly but surely, especially after the unfortunate circumstances with Ray Mancini versus Duke Koo Kim. But that's what we had with Holyfield-Qawi 1. Spawned off to a rematch about a couple years later, as Holyfield began his march as a heavyweight. He obliterated Qawi in 2 rounds, which was basically an end game for Qawi. At that point, Qawi fought again a heavyweight, lost to George Foreman after quitting on the stool in 7 rounds. But we talk about Dwight Muhammad Qawi, like Holyfield, a give-and-take warrior who ducked no one, fought the very best, 2-division world champion. It was like Holyfield, a give-and-take warrior, and just a buzzsaw. It was a nightmare for anyone he fought. Especially Google his tape when he beat Leon Spinks. That's basically Dwight Muhammad Qawi in a nutshell. To tell you what Evander Holyfield had to go through to beat Qawi, even in his home state of Atlanta, Georgia, to get the split decision nod. Just a standout fight, standout run for the career of the great Evander Holyfield. And Dwight Qawi was no pushover. I could go on and on about all the Holyfield fights. Actually, when November comes around, he had all the landmark moments there. I will probably give a whole tribute to him, especially when you talk about that Riddick Bowe trilogy. Probably the greatest heavyweight trilogy, not named Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, because that was the level Holyfield Bowe had when they got to that point. And we talk about the 2 fights with Mike Tyson. Maybe say the 2 fights with Mike Tyson elevated his stature in history, because remember, for the longest time, he wanted Mike Tyson in the ring. Here's one thing Mike Tyson fans, in their idiocy, you'll show their idiocy day in and day out. When he went to cruiserweight, he had one guy in mind. If we went from cruiserweight to heavyweight being Evander Holyfield, he had one guy in mind. Who was that? Mike Tyson. Because Mike Tyson was the moneymaker, especially after he obliterated Michael Spinks. Because when Holyfield went up to heavyweight after the Tyson-Spinks fight and all the wild things that took place with Mike Tyson afterwards, just gradually built his resume as a heavyweight while Mike Tyson was sitting on the sidelines and just putting himself on the tabloids for all the wrong reasons. While that was going on, Holyfield was beginning his march. They had a tentative fight set for June 16, 1990. But we know what happened 4 months before. Mike Tyson had his butt handed to him by James Buster Douglas. And what happened when we talk about Tyson and Douglas? It cost Mike Tyson at the time $30 million. Buster Douglas wins a title. They tried to prompt a rematch, but Evander Holyfield stepped in and said, I'm the #1 contender. I want the title shot next. He got it against James Buster Douglas, October 25th, 1990. And the perfectly placed counter right cross by Evander Holyfield to the chin of Douglas and put Douglas down and out for the count. That was all she wrote for Buster Douglas. And Holyfield accomplished his mission to win the undisputed heavyweight title. Now, of course, Holyfield and Tyson tentatively agreed to the fight of November 8th, 1991. What happens? Mike Tyson fakes a rib injury, winds up in prison, as a way to say, I want no parts of Evander Holyfield. I mean, we could talk about the case all we want with Tyson, another subject for another day. But we know he pulled whatever frick he had to faking the rib injury in 1991 to avoid Evander Holyfield. Because I said after 88, Evander Holyfield was going to handle him. And I've said this before when it comes to the theory of Holyfield and Tyson. It was proven right in November of 96. Any version of Evander Holyfield will always handle any version of Tyson. And I say it for one simple reason. One reason only. And it's in 2 words. No fear. Evander Holyfield always wanted Mike Tyson. He knew he could beat Mike Tyson. He was never intimidated by Mike Tyson. Actually, that was the talk of the Showtime build up for their fight in 96. They all admitted Evander Holyfield was not going to be intimidated by Mike Tyson. And it basically showed. So 5 years before that, probably would have been the same thing. Yes, everybody wants to point to the Burt Cooper fight with Holyfield as something different. But let me remind you, Burt Cooper was a last-minute replacement after the Mike Tyson fiasco just went down the tubes and Francesco Damiani had an ankle injury. But no way you can tell me that in any terms, even you talk about the prime Tyson, that Mike Tyson could be in the same ring as Evander Holyfield. Because I challenge you with this. Exactly a year before the first fight with Mike Tyson, Holyfield got battered by Riddick Bowe, and people were calling for him to be gone. I mean, he just got the beating of his life. He was 6 months removed from a tougher than expected win over Bobby Chiz in a fight where he looked nondescript and looked old. I mean, for the first time, he looked real old. And people still think Mike Tyson's, with all the blaming Don King, Robin Givens, and whatever, thinks, if he didn't go through that, he would have handled Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield, the guy who brought up Evander Holyfield in the amateurs? I mean, educate you to a fellow named George Benton. Okay, George Benton we were talking about all-time brilliant minds in the sport of boxing. Google George Benton. I mean, George Benton had this brilliant mindset. It had a big picture view of some of the guys he brought up. And we talk about Evander Holyfield and Pernell Whitaker, not the Holyfield, but also the late Pernell Whitaker. I mean, Pernell Whitaker always gave credit to George Benton when he talked about his ability to duck and slip and use the defense. But the brilliant mind of George Benton would have had Evander Holyfield prepped perfectly for any kind of showdown with Mike Tyson in any era. No other way to describe it. Because people are so fixated by how Mike Tyson blew out everybody he fought, up until the Buster Douglas fight. He blew out guys that were afraid of him. You think he was going to blow out a guy that was never going to be intimidated by Mike Tyson? I don't think so. I mean, as it is disrespect to Mike Tyson, a lot of you guys don't understand that no fear, that alone gives you a strong chance against anybody in any era. I mean, that's why Evander Holyfield is the warrior. I mean, you want to talk about the Mike Tyson with Kevin Rooney when he was at his peak? Have at it. I mean, his peak was a blur of the moment. That was it. Here today, gone tomorrow. Evander Holyfield had sustained excellence from when he went to cruiserweight all the way through the end of 1997 when he beat Michael Moore in the rematch. And I always said when he was rolling after the Tyson fights, he was going to handle Michael Moore easily, and he did. So that's what we had. So Mike Tyson fans, you can talk about all your conspiracy theories all you want with Don King, Robin Givens, Cus D'Amato, and Kevin Rooney. Two of the guys that trained Evander Holyfield. The first one was George Benton, one of the all-time brilliant minds. Guess who else trained Evander Holyfield and would have had him ready to beat Mike Tyson? Emanuel Stewart. And people call Emanuel Stewart the greatest trainer of all time. Don't think for 1 second those guys would have had Evander Holyfield ready to handle business against Mike Tyson. I mean, Evander Holyfield was 5 years older and had a shop-worn body when he beat him the first time. What's the excuse? I don't want to hear about all your fabricated excuses from Mike Tyson fans because Holyfield beat him fair and square. Any version of Evander Holyfield beats any version of Mike Tyson because he was never afraid and was more skilled than Mike Tyson fans would ever give him credit for. I mean, more skilled. He was one of those guys, when you hit him, he wanted to buckle down and find a way to hit you back. And people saying, want to bust out all of these crazy videos with Tyson and whatever he did in the past, none of those guys was Evander Holyfield. I mean, even when Riddick Bowe was basically clobbering him in those 3 fights, even when Lennox Lewis was clobbering him in the first fight, Evander Holyfield didn't go anywhere. And you think Mike Tyson is going to buckle down and wipe out Evander Holyfield in 91 seconds like it did to Michael Spinks? Evander Holyfield was not Michael Spinks. I mean, you could probably say the biggest win for Mike Tyson when he fought Michael Spinks was you had a scared Michael Spinks. Don't think Evander Holyfield was going to be scared. So that is the myth that basically was just destroyed in November of 96. But it goes to show, once again, as I elaborated, just how terrifically great Evander Holyfield was when it started with the first win over Dwight Muhammad-Qawi to win the cruiserweight championship, when he began to march to heavyweight when he knocked out Buster Douglas to win the title, of course, the trilogy with Riddick Bowe, and when he knocked out Mike Tyson in November of 96, basically to solidify his legacy as one of the all-time great sports icons in at least boxing history. What a terrific, terrific run. I can go on and on about Evander Holyfield if I wanted to. Just a legit all-time great. Top 10 in history, bar none, and it's not even close. Some people want to make all the funny accusations. Have at it. Doesn't change history. Point is, the guy legitimately won the world title 3 times from 86 to 96. And that should tell you the magnificent run of Evander Holyfield. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful 8th of July, 2025. I will be back at it tomorrow night. And as always, if you missed any part of this show, you can catch it on the replay on the Apple Podcast app, as well as iHeartRadio and Spotify, as the show will be uploaded to those apps. And as I always conclude by saying, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. Take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you take care of yourself first, good things will come your way. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters in life. Focus on you first and always take care of yourself first. Have a good rest of the night. Enjoy the rest of the 8th of July. Take care. God bless. Enjoy the evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.